success is an inside job, is really what I'm trying to say. You have to look at your belief system, the biology of your belief system, and see how it's getting in the way of your own creativity and genius, and even keeping you from the things you love to do.
Have you ever felt like the only woman in the room? Kathy Gardarian has been there, done that. She's the author of Feet to the Fire, Finding My Soul in Success. The book is one woman's story of building an international multi-million-dollar business while growing her own soul. From the Dalai Lama to Deepak Chopra, Kathy shares her story of finding and applying loving energy to every facet of her incredible life. Kathy, welcome to Bump in the Road. If you would, tell us your story.
Well, my story would have to begin with I was hired by 5 men in Los Angeles to do sales and marketing to major retail chains. And I was the only female in the sales department, and there were like 30 other men and me. And even though I excelled in sales, the president would close the door of the sales meeting and be me and the 30 guys. And he'd say, well, Kathy has the highest sales totals again this month. So how do you guys like being beat out by a skirt? And what I started to notice was how many times he brought women down, no matter how good they were. I mean, he would tell me, oh, you could never do this as a woman. You could never have a company. It was always a very demeaning, really kind of robbing your soul of all the things that one wants to get out of doing good business. And finally, I got enough nerve to leave. And I do say this in my book, never stay for the money. I thought I was making a lot of money, and I was actually an independent contractor, and they were keeping 2/3 of the money, and I was getting 1/3, and I was making them a lot of money. So when I finally left, I realized how important it is to do things in a fair and equitable kind of way. So basically what ended up was I got a very small account at the time called the Home Depot. And the Home Depot had 25 stores in the whole country and asked me to do a lot when it came to their supplies. I didn't sell them anything that went on the shelves. I did everything it took to run the company. So it was the bags and the pallet wrap and the twine and all the things you don't think about. And I started with 6 products and 25 stores. I ended up working with them for 30 years. And we went up to 2,500 stores, and then different kinds of stores. They had the expo stores. I did so many different products. And then after about 3 to 4 years into it, they asked me to store, door, deliver nationwide. And that completely changed my life by getting warehouses across the country and a bigger staff. And it was, I mean, you talk about a growth experience, I grew. And this is someone that didn't really even think they wanted to have their own company. And by the way, I named my company Qualis, Qualis, when I found out that it meant a degree of excellence and quality. And then I added international. I didn't want to limit myself. And that's how it all started.
What do you think was the foundation of your success? Because you grew like there's no tomorrow. I mean, you built a very substantial company.
Yes. And, I think for me, my whole life, from when I was a little girl and even in college, I mean, you can study things, but for me, there was always something very alive, very deep within myself. I trusted my gut. I kept thinking things could be better. And I encourage everyone. I call it, you got to do success is an inside job, is really what I'm trying to say. You have to look at your belief system, the biology of your belief system, and see how it's getting in the way of your own creativity and genius, and even keeping you from the things you love to do. And I had no idea for a while all the things I really could do until I was so angry about, you know, being called the skirt in the room. So I went ahead and started something that I thought, I'm going to show women how to do this and that you can do this. But again, it was along with continuing as the next experience I had and the next one that came along. I just kept doing the inner work and seeing how I felt about it. If I had any old belief that didn't serve me, I let it go. I really think that's the key to continuing to move into success.
What opened your eyes to the importance of inner work?
Um, you know, I took a lot of personal training kind of things. I took what's called EST way back in the 70s. And I remember that's what turned me on to all the Eastern philosophy. And for all of the things that I had learned about general religion as I was growing up, I really I connected with the spirituality part of it and the higher consciousness part of it, but also that, we're all part of a bigger story, and we just have to come and do what we came to do. And so as things started to unfold, I started to see, and we've talked about this being the only woman in the room, that happened to me a lot. And I want to say that the other thing that I really knew I had to do was to find my tribe. I had to find people who thought like I did so that it would strengthen that thinking. And I remember reading about the World Business Academy, and I was down in Southern California in Newport, and they were up in San Francisco. But the more I read about them, I said, I need to be in this group. And so when I made the call, the president of the group said to me, well, you sound wonderful, but you have to be a CEO to be in this group. I said, well, I am. And I didn't tell him I was only a CEO for a year that I had my company. And then he said, well, you got to do a minimum of $2 million a year in sales. But I was already past that. I said, oh, I'm past that. So now he's really quiet. And he said, well, and I'm thinking, well, what next, And he says, well, you'd be the only woman. And I started to laugh. I said, I think I'm getting used to that. I said, I'll tell you what I think I know, that I'm going to get value from this group and I can bring value. And so bottom line, I interviewed 2 weeks later and I got in. And that group was the one that held me accountable for everything, even things I forgot I knew, as they used to say to me, Kathy, we think you've forgotten what you know. And then they would straighten me out when I would get myself into some predicament that I really didn't handle as well as I knew I could. And so I really support people to get around, find your tribe and stay with people who are really going to hold you to your own accountability and your own actual performance. It's critical, really is.
Where do you find your tribe these days? I think since since COVID and everything, so many things have moved online. And finding a tribe online versus finding a tribe in person, are there differences?
I'm not sure, because this for me was years ago, and I stayed in that group for 22 years and I never missed a meeting, and we had meetings all over the world. That's how much value I got from that. The reason I think it's important, and how you do it today obviously is probably different, but I do think that everything we need comes to us, and we have to just say what we want and put it out in the universe. And I believe in synchronicity. I think somehow things will come to you, because how did I know by reading a magazine article that this was my group? I just knew. And I do want to also share one story. I mean, I've had so many powerful changes in my life because of this group, but I wasn't a member more than 2 or 3 months, and I got a call saying that the Dalai Lama was going to be in Newport Beach, and they've allowed a few members of the academy to come. It was a private home, only 40 people, and the Dalai Lama was going to sit with each one of us personally to share some stories with us. And so they said, so be sure, they asked me if I wanted to go. I said, absolutely. And they said, well, make sure you have your question that you want to talk to him about. Think about that. But I already knew what was happening for me, because the backstory to that was I was doing the Home Depot's work. They asked me to go to China. I got this beautiful factory in the south of China, all women making merchandise bags, transshipping through Hong Kong and shipping containers to the East Coast and the West Coast. It was going beautifully, and I was so happy with everything. But then in 1989, when Tiananmen Square happened, the Chinese people killed a lot of students. And I had a lot of people call me and say, you have to stop doing business in China, and you have to take a stand for human rights. And I actually thought they were right. I just didn't know how to do it, because I knew with the Home Depot at the time was opening 246 new stores a year. And my edict was no back orders. You got to supply the existing stores and expand to include the new stores. I couldn't give up the supplier, but I really wanted to find a way to take a stand. So I figured, well, I know what I'm going to talk to the Dalai Lama about, right? So when I got there, and and he's so lovely, he's funny, he's bright, he's just wonderful energy. And then when I told him my story, I said, what do you think I should do? And he stood up, because he was sitting on the couch. So I stood up, and he took my hands in his hands, and he said, Kathy, why would you punish the Chinese people further for the thoughts of a few? He said, that's not how you create your reality. He said, you never think about what you don't want. Boy, that's a powerful statement. You never think about what you don't want. You only keep your consciousness in the pool that you want to see. You actually act like it's already happened. And then he said, that's what you will see, and that's what you will create. That is how you create your own reality. Well, he could see that the shift in my eyes as I got it. And I said to him, I said, wow, I had never held life quite that way. I said, I was so appreciative. And because of the academy, because of the work that we would do together, I actually ended up meeting up with the Dalai Lama 2 other times. And he remembered that he helped me. He really helped me and changed my whole way I held not only business, but life. And that just, the success that gave me was phenomenal. So this is why I think not only doing your inner work, but finding your tribe is very important.
How did the Dalai Lama's words change your life?
I now remember that when, guess what? Turns out we're human. And I always say humans are perfect imperfection. I'll think of something, even today, and I'll say, oh, you're thinking about what you don't want. So I always come back to it. And then I start to hold what it is I really want to see happen, or change something for me, personally. Go, no, that's not for you. And so it's always there for me. It's almost like it's just imprinted in my soul and how I hold life. And, we are all responsible for our thoughts, and thoughts are things. We have to be very careful what we think. And also it's helped me with business. It really helped me because the academy helped me too, to see that, as Gandhi said, you have to be the change you want to see in the world, because some people they just don't have it yet, or haven't done enough inner work. And you do enough business, and you have all these other people you're working with, and sometimes you just got to go in and you bring the loving energy into the room. And I will also say that sometimes I have met people that were so conflicted inside themselves and couldn't even be nice in business. That sometimes you have to be very gentle with people because some wounds are not visible. You have to just keep sensing it. And the more I did that, the better I got at it. And it just brought me so much more joy and success in business, because people do business what they like, and people that they like. And they also, I mean, I've had buyers say, how you come in a room and things seem to calm down. I mean, I want you to take that energy and take it to one of our suppliers. Or, I mean, they really feel it. So energy is very important.
Actually, I've come to see the world in terms of energy flows. I think years ago, I read Gary Zukav's The Seat of the Soul,
Yes,
and that left such an impression on me. And it's so true that energy may not be visible to us, but you can definitely feel it.
absolutely. And by the way, Gary was in the World Business Academy with me too. Yeah, a long time ago. And yes, and again, I kept getting opportunities where I was the first woman in the room, and that was true of even Vans shoes. Now, Vans has been very successful for so many years, and they were a large NASDAQ company, but they never had a woman. So I was nominated to be the first woman on the board, and I served for 10 years, and it was interesting because, again, I had to remember to hold my energy and to, you know, just because, you watch like 13 men across around the boardroom, talking about all these issues. And if I have a thought, I would raise my hand and say something. And the CEO would go, oh, you could just feel the shift in energy, because men and women don't think exactly alike. And the CEO would say, oh, I didn't even think about that. And so there's always that shift. And I got very good at really being able to just beam love and to hold the energy for the whole room. And it changes things. And women, I will say it over and over again, this is a time of moving women forward. And we are still, I think it's either between 22 or 29% of public companies have women on their boards, and that's way too low. I live in California, and I believe I think the law is if you have a public company, you have to have a minimum of 2 women on a corporate board, which is good. It's starting to change. I trust, and I know there are more women CEOs today, which I also of large companies. But I do think the board needs to, and they've already proven it. They've had books written about how they're much more successful when there's the balance of the male and the female energy. Yeah.
Well, women are half the market, roughly. It's a bad decision making. It's a bad corporate decision to exclude half your market.
Yeah. I would agree. I would totally agree with you. Yeah.
Now, in your travels, did you ever get into any meditation?
Yes. And, and Deepak Chopra also was not really a member of the academy. He was called a fellow to the academy. And we would have all of these people that had written books and had bigger thinking that we wanted to include in spirituality and business into this group. And Deepak joined years and years ago at the very beginning. And I got to be very good friends with him. And he actually endorsed my book as well, one of the people. And he taught us a lot about meditation and quieting down and yoga and things that you can finally just have to stop this constant rambling of thoughts that some of them are just not going to serve you. So yes, that, see, it's all of it. As I moved along, I just met so many other people. And Jean Houston was also a fellow to the academy, and we got to be we're like sisters. We're both have Italian descent, and we've just been all over the world together and learned so much together. And I think that this is what I mean. I think it helps you grow when you can have people of like-minded people around you. Very
That's an
important.
amazing tribe, though. That's
Oh,
beyond
you have no idea.
comprehension.
everybody that was done anything back then was part of the academy. It was so powerful. And what saddens me today is that it's no longer available. It's not doing that. You can look up World Business Academy and they're doing things on the environment, but they're not working with CEOs. And there are times when I've actually thought, maybe I should start a group because it's so valuable. And I know how much it helped me. And, but I do think that that's what we have to do. We have to find like-minded people to hang out with. We can't just have people, gee, Kathy, glad you're doing well. How about finding out what's really going on, and helping you with issues. And when you have CEOs that have had some of the same problems, maybe not identical, but you're in a group of CEOs, you have people who can say, oh, that happened to me. This is what we did. This is the better way to handle it. But for the academy, I want to say, because we had so much spirituality and consciousness involved, there was a lot of things that they said to do. I had a very difficult buyer at one point, and I was just going to leave the account. And they said, no, let us remind you that you don't have to say anything, but you can walk in that room and beam him love and just let your higher self do business with his higher self. He's going to get it. And I have to tell you, that works so beautifully. And I've done it over and over again. And people just say, gosh, it's so lovely being with you. I feel more energized after I'm with you. Now you get that, because what you said earlier about energy, people, it's out there. People feel your energy field. Yeah.
They do. And what you said about quieting your mind, I think, is so important. And when you learn to quiet your mind, you learn to witness your thoughts.
Yes.
Until you can witness your thoughts, you're not conscious. You can't make conscious decisions.
Right. Or you make the same old decision. It's
That's
the
not
same
a conscious decision.
Yeah. It really drags you down. It's not productive, and it's not enlivening. Yeah.
It's not interesting even. I mean, I think when you start to, witness your thoughts, that's where you start to see these patterns that develop.
Yeah.
And then you get to choose. You can, look at it and say, boy, that is a maladaptive way of doing things. You can make a conscious change. I think the other thing that happens is when you learn to meditate and witness your thoughts, it creates a space. And it creates a space in your everyday life where you're not as reactive. You can stop and listen, watch, and make a choice as opposed to just reacting.
Yes. And when you come from that place, instead of going right into reaction and arguing with somebody in business, it makes all the difference in the world. It's a very important point. Yeah.
In business and in life. I think that carries through with any sort of human relationship.
Absolutely. It helps every relationship you have, without a doubt. Yep.
Now, you mentioned intuition earlier. What about intuition?
I really think people have to trust their gut, because I think there's a part of us that if you just really think a little deeper about something, you sort of know whether it's a yes or a no, or what should I go or not go. And the other thing is to be so kind. Be kind with yourself, but be kind with others. And if it's a no, you can even be kind about saying no. But it's I just think it's your higher self going through all the mishmash of your mind chatter and telling you what's really true. And I think if we miss it, I think life will bring it around again, and you'll get another chance.
Oh, I think so too. As a matter of fact, when you look back, can you think of any decisions you made where you did trust your intuition and things seemed to work out?
When I did or didn't trust my...
Well, you can look at it either way, but let's say in trusting your intuition, do things tend to work out?
Yes. And certainly there was a major time when the academy sat me down and told me to make sure I took this difficult person and beamed him love. You don't have to say a word, just be the energy of love in the room. And as we started to negotiate, it worked out so well. And then he came to town about 4 weeks later and handed me another $5 million a year in business. I mean, it's amazing how people are wanting that acceptance of who they are and for you to honor who they are. And if they can't, it's so much better than, arguing and fighting over something or deciding that something, you want to be right. I always say, do you want to be happy or do you want to be right? But this, I just think it serves everyone and it serves the world. And it certainly helps you in business. You just do better business and you're happy while you're doing it, which makes a big difference.
And I think making the right choice, the right decision as you perceive it at that moment is really important. Otherwise, you look back with so many regrets, and they're energetic activity regrets, if you will, that you can't take back.
That's so true. And it, and I'll say this, you also have to forgive yourself at times. I mean, when I think about doing my inner work, there are people I needed to forgive, but you also need to forgive yourself, and just move on. It's in the past. You don't have to repeat it unless you choose to. And there are certainly people who bring it around again, and life will bring you something else that you'll be able to have a chance to change it. Yeah. And because I do think with age comes some wisdom, which is different than knowledge.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's very different than knowledge. And actually, it's interesting. In the last several weeks, several people or incidents have come up where we're talking about how often women, once they hit 50 or so, become fairly invisible. And,
Mm.
in terms of being seen as attractive and a viable person. That's a little less true today. But even so, as we get older, we're looked at rather differently. And yet, there is so much wisdom in this group that's getting
Yes.
older, particularly in this female group as we're aging. And it seems to me the world is so in need of that type of perspective.
Yes. And I'm participating in a couple of them, and I think in groups of just women. And when you talk amongst yourself and you support each other and you empower each other and learn from each other, it just keeps you alive, and it keeps you so much more in touch with how much more you can give. But I do think that, again, those are the kind of women, if they've had enough business experience, that should be on the corporate boards we're talking about, because I think that's what's really needed. It's really wanted and needed.
I think it's needed everywhere.
Yeah,
And I think you can contribute wherever you are.
true.
And
It's true.
I suspect over the next decade, we're going to see a great deal of change in our economy, our institutions, the way things are structured. And I think that is an opportunity, actually, for people to step in.
Yes. Um, you just have to follow your excitement, because I think the things that excite you are really, I think, what you're here to do, what you're supposed to be doing. And a lot of times when I was younger, I sort of felt that way. And then when I was off target, I could see that that wasn't my path. But when you are doing the things that start to make you blossom and think deeper, this is what makes life worth living. But you do have to follow your excitement, and everything you do is a stepping stone to what you will do. So it keeps building you up and making you wiser. So
But what a difference that is from this hierarchical linear society that we live in, where you go to school, you get the degree, you get the job, the house in the burbs, the spouse, the car, whatever. And, you wake up at 40 and realize you don't know who you are.
or the old saying, you can never get enough of what you really don't need. Mm. So yeah.
But what if life were nonlinear, experiential, and guided by energy? Think how different our paths would be.
Yes. Yeah. And I'm not sure how long that's going to take for us to really realize that that's what it is, because we are energy beings, and we have choices here. But you're right. There's so many things that when you're a child, you're told all these things, and you finally at one point you realize you have this store of belief systems that tell you how this is how life is and this is how it's going to work. And if they don't fit you, you can just let them go with love. And well, that was Aunt Mary's point of view, but it doesn't fit me. And it's that you don't make it wrong. You just let it go and you move on and you keep deciding what is the highest and best use of me. And that's a really important question to ask. And sometimes it changes. I'm going through a little bit of that now since I'm, quote, trying to retire, but I wrote the book because I wanted women to not ever listen to some of what I listen to, and to be brave when you are the only woman in the room. It's okay. There are ways. And but now I'm just trying to figure out what is the best way to use your time. But again, it has to be something that just sings to you. All of a sudden, you're just going to know.
You
Yeah.
are, but I always say that we spend the first half of our lives getting all this crap piled on top of us, and the
Yeah.
second half of our lives trying to peel it back if we're even aware enough to do that.
Yeah.
And yet, I I think we almost need that first half of our lives to start to see what we don't want in order to see what we do want, because we're very dualistic people.
Yes,
Um,
it's very true.
and so maybe we have to put in those first 40 years or whatever, but at that point, whether it's at 35 or 55 or whatever the age is irrelevant. Maybe there it's time to take that chance, step out of your comfort zone, and pursue what excites you.
Absolutely. And I think that's why we even have those lessons, that as we move through those, it just makes us stronger. And then the other latter part of our lives, we know now, we learn so much. Again, you become wiser. It makes it all the difference. So maybe we need all that in the beginning. I think about those times, early 20s, 30s. I would never go back. I was,
Oh no, unless I could go back knowing what I know now.
oh, yeah. Well, there we go. Okay. You figure out how to do that, Pat. I'm with you.
No, those are really, I think they are very tough years.
Yeah.
And I think that as you get older, life gets so much better. And I think once you decide to take that journey within, it is the most interesting journey you will ever take. Has so much depth, you'll never use it all up. You're on a soulful learning journey that
Yes.
really feeds you, I think, in a way that none of this materialistic stuff can.
No, I agree. And I would say that, I, well, the thought I have is that when we actually are excited about something, and I do think that, may I say it this way, I do think that if we need to experience, or the next thing we need to do, I do believe that life will dish it up. I mean, because when I was growing my business, it seemed like the next appropriate thing to do would just fall in my lap. I mean, you know, right there at China, I mean, right after I got the business and it was going well in China, I get to talk to the Dalai Lama. I mean, every time I turned around, the next appropriate thing to do showed up. I do like the synchronicity that seems to happen. And I think whatever you are supposed to learn in life, I think it's going to come your way. I actually believe that.